Spirit Sports Consultants presents.
This is our guide to player prop bet, something very important as we approach playoffs and Super Bowl specifically. For this one, we're going to look at some general rules we apply for player prop bets. Let's start with some general rules for player props, then we'll get into specific positions. One thing, TD props we think should be avoided, especially for wide receivers and running backs. Difficult to calculate who's going to get the ball. For quarterbacks, maybe, but we still think you're better off looking at yardage. Look at that, and then you look at running back and wide receiver. Also focus on yardage. Look for ideal matchups. Look at averages, offense and defense, and we'll show you how to do that here in a second. We're going to focus on some specific examples for Week 18 of the 2023 NFL season. We're looking at two quarterbacks, and we're going to look at one running back and one wide receiver to kind of give you the rules that we follow, help you with your picks. All right, let's look at a Week 18 example here with Buffalo going into Miami to play the game that's going to decide who wins the AFC East. Well, if you look at the base statistics, if you got to look at both sides, come up with an average, and then apply some other factors. So the prop bet is 265.5. He averages about 280, so that's well over that. However, you got to look at the Buffalo pass defense. Now, they allow 207. Those numbers have gotten better lately, so even just averaging those two numbers is coming way below 265. That's not enough for us to pick one side. What we want to look at here is an extraneous factor. This factor specifically has to do with the shoulder injury that Tua suffered at the end of the game against the Ravens. Final play of the game. Why was he still playing? Don't ask. But he hurt his shoulder. We don't know how healthy he's going to be, so that makes us cautious. Then here's the big one. Rain, thunderstorms in the forecast for the Miami area. We think for that reason and the fact the averages came in about 245, that gives us a nice lean to go under 265 number. Couple that with the fact this is a primetime game. We see unders on that. Go under. Okay, so now let's take a look at another Week 18 game. This time the Texans at the Colts. Ignore that image, it's backwards. We've got C.J. Stroud, who's coming back, second game removed from the concussion protocol, going up against the Colts pass defense. Has been very suspect all year. His averages is 258. The number is 257 for the player prop. The Colts average well below that, 226. The average is going to take you somewhere in the 240s, so it's not much of an advantage on that side. Got to look at another key factor. For one thing, we have injuries in the Colts secondary. The starting quarterback's potentially out. Now we have to look at secondary factors, in this case, where the game's played, surface and weather. We really like looking at overs for an indoor stadium. Lucas Oil Stadium is just that. It's going to be a fast track with those Texans fast receivers and C.J. Stroud throwing the ball. We think that's going to lend itself towards an over. So let's look at that number again and see if we have the advantage. So let's go ahead and make C.J. Stroud over 257, and we'll set that as a half selection. We don't feel as confident about that one as we do the Tua pick. We do love the yardage, the numbers, the fact there are injuries in the Colts secondary. We also like the pace of play. Let's talk more about pace of play now. Let's talk now about pace of play, which is something is more of an art than a science. Trying to figure out, is the opponent a rushing or a passing team? Look at Buffalo, for example. They 122 rushing yards. In that game against Dallas, they really used the running game to stifle the Cowboys and kind of keep Dak Prescott off the field. They'll probably do the same thing against Tua. And will this be a defensive struggle or a shootout? Well, in the rainy conditions, plus playing for the division, expect the teams to be tight and more conservative. That lends itself to an under on both the score and the yardage. Next, let's take a look at the running back position and look at the averages and see if we can find a good situation with a Week 18 example. We'll start with the Buffalo-Miami game, staying with that. Running back James Cook, the prop bet is 63.5 yards. Look at the Miami defense. A good rush defense, keeps under 100 yards per game, 95. But injuries on the defensive line, conditions, pace of play benefit rushing. We think there's going to be rain. We think they're going to run the ball. They also want to control the clock, keep two off the field. So take the over on this. All right, next up we have wide receivers. Of course, we're going to apply the same pass offense, pass defense logic we did for quarterbacks and try to figure out the top receivers if they're going to get the ball. In this case, we're going to look at Atlanta at New Orleans, Drake London, with a seemingly low number, 53.5, but look at the pass defense for the Saints, number 3 in quarterback rating against. We think that's going to be a slow, rush-oriented game. Take the under on this one. We think the Falcons will try to control the clock by running the ball, and at the quarterback position, we don't know who's going to play more, Desmond Ridder or Taylor Heineke, both of whom throw too many interceptions to be a real threat to put up major yardage. So again, the under on this one. So all the ones we've discussed, the only one we added to our pick sheet for the week would be the aforementioned Tua number. We think with the weather, we think Buffalo's defense, we just think they're going to be maybe running the ball. We like the under 265, so take that. And then for the rest of our plays, check out our other video. For this week, take a look at our picks for all games. We break down all the games, especially the ones we see action on. Not everybody's starting their starters this week. Also, be on the lookout for Super Bowl week. We're going to do an extensive video on player props. Thanks again.
That's all for this time. Thank you for joining. Please subscribe to our channel, and we look forward to sharing our future videos with you.